The lone warship's arrival. The vastness of space stretched endlessly before them, the darkness broken only by the cold glow of distant stars. The Galactic Armada, a fleet of over 1,000 warships, floated near the human colony of Ardent Prime. These warships were massive, built for destruction, their metallic hulls reflecting the eerie light of a nearby gas giant. The aliens had come to claim another world, expecting no resistance. Aboard the command ship Zytharian, Admiral Korvax watched the planet below with amusement. His reptilian eyes gleamed as he turned to his officers. "Humans are weak," he declared. "They always surrender. This will be no different." Just then, an officer rushed forward, his scales twitching with nervous energy. "Admiral, we have detected a human warship approaching at high speed." Korvax frowned. "A single ship? Are they sending diplomats already?" The officer hesitated before shaking his head. "No, sir. It's a battleship. The HSS Helios." At first, Korvax laughed. A lone ship against an entire armada. It was foolishness. The aliens around him joined in, their voices a chorus of amusement. But as the Helios came into view, the laughter faded. The human warship was smaller than the alien dreadnoughts, but its sleek, predatory design carried an air of defiance. Its hull was painted dark, almost blending with the void, and its energy signature pulsed like a caged storm. Inside the Helios, Captain Ethan Carter stood at the bridge, his gaze locked on the enemy fleet. His crew sat around him, their hands steady on controls, their expressions calm despite the impossible odds. "One ship against 1,000, murmured Lieutenant Reyes, his voice low but steady. "Some might call this suicide." Carter smirked. "And some might call it strategy." The ship's AI, Nova, flickered to life on the main display. Her voice was smooth, almost amused. "Captain, the enemy has locked onto us. We are being hailed." Carter exhaled slowly. "Put them through." Admiral Korvax's image filled the screen, his scaled face twisted in confusion. "Human, why do you approach? This is not a battle you can win." Carter leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "Oh, I don't know, Admiral. I figured I'd come and say hello before we ruin your day." Korvax sneered. "Brave words, but they will not save you." The transmission cut off. Seconds later, the alien fleet charged their weapons, preparing to erase the lone warship from existence. Carter's smirk never faded. "All right, people. Let's show them what a single human warship can do." "Engaging stealth systems," Nova announced. And just like that, the Helios vanished from the enemy sensors. Admiral Korvax stood frozen, his eyes wide in disbelief. Where did it go? A silence fell over the Armada. The lone warship had disappeared, leaving only an eerie emptiness in the void. The battle had just begun. The first strike, a human surprise. The Galactic Armada floated in the cold void, its massive warships scanning frantically for the human vessel that had just vanished. Alarms blared aboard the Zytharian, Admiral Korvax's command ship. His reptilian fingers clenched the armrest of his throne-like chair, his golden eyes narrowing. "Where is it?" he snarled. The Helios had disappeared from every sensor, as if swallowed by space itself. It was impossible. No warship, not even the most advanced ones in the Dominion, could escape detection so suddenly. One of Korvax's officers, a jittery creature named Varkin, frantically worked at his station. "Admiral, we are scanning all frequencies. There is no trace of them." Korvax's tail twitched in irritation. "Impossible. They must be using a cloaking field." Varkin swallowed. "Sir, if humans have cloaking technology, it means they've advanced far beyond our predictions." Korvax bared his fangs. "Then we will flush them out. Order the fleet to fire at random. We'll turn this sector into a storm of plasma and debris. No ship, no matter how small, will survive." The Armada's warships unleashed hell, filling the void with streaks of blue and red plasma. Gigantic cannons thundered, their shockwaves rippling through the silence of space. Explosions bloomed in every direction, turning the battlefield into a chaotic inferno. Yet, amid the destruction, the Helios remained unseen. And then, without warning, a single torpedo shot out from the darkness. It moved fast, too fast for the alien defense systems to react. The torpedo slammed into the hull of a Dominion battleship, tearing through its shields like paper. A moment of eerie silence followed. Then, boom! The battleship erupted into a fiery explosion, sending debris crashing into nearby vessels. The shockwave rippled through the Armada, shaking even the Xipherian. The bridge lights flickered. Officers stumbled. Korvax's heart pounded. His claws dug into his chair. One torpedo. One ship lost. This is not possible, he roared. But it was only the beginning. Another torpedo streaked out from nowhere. Then another and another. 3 more ships went up in flames before the Armada could even locate the source of the attack. The Helios was out there, somewhere, striking with deadly precision. Aboard the Helios, Captain Ethan Carter watched the chaos unfold with quiet satisfaction. His plan was working. "Status?" he asked. Nova's voice hummed through the bridge. 3 battleships destroyed, 2 heavily damaged. The enemy fleet is disoriented. Carter leaned forward. "Good. Now let's make them scared." The Helios decloaked for exactly 3 seconds, just long enough for the aliens to see it emerge from the wreckage, a lone predator among panicked prey. Then it vanished again. On the Xipherian, Korvax saw the brief flicker of the human warship before it disappeared. His blood ran cold. This is no ordinary ship," he muttered. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Korvax felt fear. The lone warship had just begun its hunt. The Armada's counterattack. The Galactic Armada, once an unstoppable force, now felt haunted. The Helios was a ghost in the darkness, striking and vanishing, leaving behind wreckage and fear. For the first time, the Dominion's war machine was fighting an enemy it could not see, could not predict. Admiral Korvax paced across the Xipherian's command deck, his claws tapping anxiously against the metal floor. His officers stood silent, their usual arrogance replaced by something new, unease. "This is a human trick," he growled. "One ship cannot fight an entire armada." A trembling officer spoke. "Sir, it is fighting, and it is winning." Korvax bared his fangs. "Then we stop playing defense. If we cannot find the human ship, we make sure it has nowhere to hide." With a flick of his claws, he activated a fleet-wide transmission. "This is Admiral Korvax. All ships, engage formation Theta. Surround the battlefield. Deploy graviton pulses to disrupt their stealth systems. Force them out into the open." Across the battlefield, the massive warships of the Dominion Armada moved into position, their engines burning bright as they sealed every possible escape route. Then, the real trap was set. Dozens of ships released graviton pulses, invisible waves of energy that rippled through space, designed to disrupt cloaking fields and force hidden ships to reveal themselves. For a moment, everything was silent. Then, a flicker, a distortion, and there it was, the Helios, right in the center of the Armada. Korvax's eyes widened in triumph. "There you are." Before the humans could react, every single warship in the fleet locked weapons onto the Helios. Fire, a storm of plasma, railgun slugs, and missile barrages erupted toward the lone warship. The Helios was fast, but it was surrounded on all sides. There was nowhere to run. Aboard the Helios, alarms blared. Sparks rained down from overloaded circuits. The bridge shook violently as plasma bolts slammed into the shields, pushing them to their breaking point. Lieutenant Reyes gripped the controls. "Captain, our stealth is down. We're completely exposed." Carter stayed calm, his mind racing. They weren't dead yet. There was still a way out. "Nova, reroute power to forward thrusters," he commanded. Nova's voice was smooth, but even she sounded strained. Captain, that will drain energy from shields. We will be vulnerable. Carter smirked. We're already vulnerable. Let's make it count. The Helios engines roared, and suddenly, instead of retreating, it accelerated, straight toward the enemy fleet. The aliens hesitated. This was madness. A single warship, charging an entire armada. Brace for impact. Raid shouted. The Helios barely scraped past an enemy dreadnought, twisting and rolling between dozens of massive ships at impossible speeds. The enemy's own crossfire began hitting their own ships as they tried to track the human vessel. A Dominion destroyer took a railgun slug meant for the Helios, exploding into debris. On the Zypharian, Korvax watched in horror as his own fleet struggled to keep up. This is not a warship, he whispered. This is a beast. Inside the Helios, Carter's grin widened. That's right, he muttered. Try and catch us. But then, a direct hit. The ship lurched, throwing crew members against their seats. The right wing of the Helios was burning. Nova's voice rang through the bridge. Hull integrity compromised. Shields at 14%. Carter wiped the blood from his forehead. They were running out of time. The Armada had nearly boxed them in. They needed a new plan, and fast. But before Carter could speak, an incoming transmission appeared on the screen. And the face staring back at him was not human. It was Admiral Korvax. The lizard-like alien grinned, his golden eyes gleaming with triumph. Captain Carter, he hissed. You have fought well, but the hunt is over. Carter's fingers clenched into fists. He could see hundreds of enemy ships closing in. For the first time in the battle, he realized they might not escape this time. The unthinkable gambit. Aboard the Helios, alarms screamed, sparks rained from shattered panels, and smoke filled the air. The ship trembled under the relentless barrage from the Galactic Armada. On the screen, Admiral Korvax's golden eyes gleamed with triumph. Captain Carter, the alien hissed. Your defiance ends here. Carter wiped blood from his temple, his breath steady. You talk too much, Admiral. Korvax's grin widened. And you run too much. But now, there is nowhere left to run. He was right. The Helios was boxed in. Hundreds of enemy warships surrounded them, their weapons locked, ready to tear the human ship apart. Shields were down to 8%. The right wing was barely functional, and the engines were overheating. Carter looked around at his crew. Reyes gritted his teeth at the helm, his hands tight on the controls. Nova's voice remained calm, but even the AI couldn't hide the dire situation. They were out of options, or at least that's what the Dominion thought. Carter's eyes flickered toward the ship's reactor status, still operational. A crazy idea formed in his mind. Nova, he said, wiping soot from his face, calculate the exact gravitational center of the enemy fleet, the point where the most mass is concentrated. Nova processed the command in milliseconds. Calculation complete. A Dreadnought-class battleship is at the center of the formation. If it is destroyed, the resulting explosion will destabilize nearby ships. Carter's lips curled into a grin. That was their way out. Lieutenant Reyes, he said, plot a course straight for that dreadnought. Reyes's head snapped toward him. Sir, that's suicide. We won't survive a direct attack run. Carter smirked. We don't need to survive it. We just need to make sure they don't. Reyes hesitated for only a second, then he nodded. Nova, route every last ounce of power to the engines. Shields, weapons, life support. Drain them all. Nova's voice responded instantly. Warning. Crew survival probability drops to 2% under these conditions. Carter grinned wider. Sounds better than 0%, doesn't it? He turned to his crew. Strap in. This is going to be one hell of a ride. With a sudden, violent burst of acceleration, the Helios roared forward, straight toward the heart of the Armada. The predator becomes the prey. On the Zypharian, Admiral Korvax's smirk faded as he saw the Helios charging directly at his command fleet. "What are they doing?" he snarled. Varkin, his tactical officer, stammered. They're heading for the Dreadnought-class battleship." Korvax's claws dug into his chair. "Fools! Destroy them before they reach it." The entire Dominion fleet opened fire. Blazing plasma lances, railgun slugs, and missile barrages filled space like a raging storm. The Helios danced through the chaos, its hull burning, pieces breaking apart, but it kept going. Reyes gritted his teeth, hands shaking on the controls. "Come on, baby, hold together." Missiles narrowly missed. Railgun rounds grazed the hull. The ship was falling apart, but it was still alive. Then, the dreadnought loomed ahead. Carter's voice was calm. "Nova, prepare the reactor." Nova responded instantly. "Captain, I detect no escape plan." Carter smirked. "There isn't one." And then, they fired. The Helios unleashed its final torpedoes, targeting the dreadnought's main reactor core. The enemy ship's shields flared, struggling to hold. And then they collapsed. The torpedoes pierced the hull. A moment of silence. Then, a blinding explosion erupted at the center of the Dominion fleet. The shockwave tore through the nearby battleships, sending wreckage flying in all directions. The formation shattered. Smaller vessels were crushed by the blast. Admiral Korvax watched in horror as his own fleet was caught in the destruction. And in that chaos, the Helios disappeared into the fire. Silence in the void. On the Zypharian, smoke filled the bridge. Officers lay sprawled, alarms flashing. The fleet was in disarray, hundreds of ships damaged or destroyed. Korvax pushed himself up, his vision blurred. "Status." A weak voice answered. "The fleet is in retreat. The Helios is gone." For a moment, the Admiral felt a sense of relief. The human ship was destroyed. But then, a single transmission flickered onto the screen. And there, through the static, was Captain Carter's face, a cocky grin, blood dripping down his forehead. "You lose, Admiral." And then, the signal cut to black. Korvax collapsed into his chair, staring at the wreckage around him. For the first time in his life, he realized that the Dominion was not invincible, and humanity was just getting started. The ghost in the wreckage. Silence. The once mighty Galactic Armada drifted in the aftermath of destruction. Flaming wreckage of battleships spun in the void. The dreadnought at the heart of the fleet was nothing more than a burning husk, its core still glowing from the explosion. On the Zypharian, Admiral Korvax sat motionless, staring at the devastation before him. His golden eyes were wide, his claws gripping the arms of his chair so tightly that the metal buckled beneath his fingers. The Helios was gone, or so it seemed. "Admiral." A weak voice crackled through the damaged comms. It was his second-in-command, Varkin. "Survivors are reporting. They saw the human ship vanish just before the explosion." Korvax's head snapped up. "Vanished." "Yes, sir," Varkin coughed. "It was there. And then it was gone." Korvax's gut twisted. He had underestimated them again. He turned to the remaining fleet. "Initiate long-range scans. Find that ship. The battle isn't over until I have their captain's head." But deep down, he knew. The Helios had escaped. Drifting in the shadows, a few million kilometers away, buried in the thick clouds of an asteroid field, a ship floated in silence. It was damaged beyond belief. One wing was shattered, the engines flickered weakly, and the hull was covered in scorch marks. Inside the Helios, the crew was barely holding on. Captain Carter lay against the wall, blood trickling down his arm. The impact from the explosion had thrown him against the command console, and his head throbbed. "Status report," he groaned. Nova's voice crackled, her usual smooth tone now distorted from the damage. "Shields, 0%. Engines, critically damaged. Life support, functional, but limited. Weapons, disabled. Stealth systems, partially operational. Hull integrity, holding at 32%. Reyes coughed from the pilot's seat. Translation: we're alive, but barely. Carter forced a grin despite the pain. I'll take it. He turned to Nova. Can we move? Nova hesitated. Limited mobility available, Captain. But any sudden energy signature will alert the enemy fleet. Carter exhaled. The Galactic Armada was still out there, licking its wounds, scanning for them. If they tried to fly now, they'd be found in an instant. They had to disappear. His eyes flickered to the asteroid field outside the window. A plan formed. A desperate, insane plan. Reyes, he said, sitting up despite the pain. We're not flying out of here. Reyes frowned. Then what are we doing? Carter's grin widened. We're becoming a ghost. Fading into myth. Using the last of their remaining power, the Helios drifted into the thickest part of the asteroid field. Then, Nova shut everything down. Every system, every engine, every thruster, every heat signature. To the outside world, the Helios ceased to exist. No signals, no movement, nothing. Like a dead husk floating through space, the hunter becomes the hunted. Hours later, on the Zypharian, Admiral Korvax slammed his fists against the console. Where is it? He roared. Where is the human ship? His officers scrambled at their stations. Sir, we've scanned the entire sector. There's nothing. No energy signals, no debris, no escape pods. It's just gone. Korvax's eyes narrowed. No ship could simply disappear. Not like this. Unless. They're hiding, he muttered. Somewhere in the wreckage, like a wounded predator. He stood up. His tail lashed behind him. Deploy hunter drones. Sweep the asteroid field. Find them. And then, almost whispering to himself, he added, I want Carter's skull on my wall. Trapped and hunted. Back in the Helios, the crew sat in absolute silence. Outside, the hunter drones swept through the asteroids, scanning, searching. They were too close. One wrong move, one stray sound, and they were dead. Reyes clenched his fists. Captain, if they find us like this, we can't even fight back. Carter's gaze was calm, calculating. He knew, if they didn't act soon, the Armada would eventually flush them out. He needed a way to turn the tables. And then an idea struck him. A crazy, impossible, perfect idea. He smirked. Then we don't wait for them to find us, he whispered. We make them fear us. Reyes blinked. Sir. Carter leaned forward, his voice deadly serious. We're going to haunt this battlefield like a damned ghost ship. Reyes swallowed. I don't follow. Carter's grin widened. We shut everything down, right? No power, no signals. They think we're dead. Reyes nodded slowly. Carter's eyes gleamed. Then let's prove them right. He turned to Nova. Nova, activate Phase 2. For a moment, there was silence. Then Nova's voice, smooth and eerie, whispered, Captain, you are insane. Carter chuckled. That's why it's going to work. And with that, the Helios prepared to strike again. Like a ghost in the wreckage, the Phantom strikes. The asteroid field drifted silently through space, its jagged rocks shrouding the crippled Helios. The Galactic Armada's hunter drones weaved between the debris, scanning, searching. They were ruthless, relentless. Machines built for one purpose, to hunt and eliminate. Yet, no matter how deep they scanned, they found nothing. The Helios was a ghost. But ghosts could still haunt, awakening the nightmare. Inside the darkened Helios, the crew held their breath. Every screen was dimmed, every system shut down except for one hidden process, deep within Nova's core. Carter leaned forward, voice hushed. Nova, are we ready? The eye's voice was smooth, but with an unsettling edge. Phase 2 is online, Captain. All I need is your command." Carter grinned. "Then let's turn fear into a weapon." The Armada's first mistake. Aboard the Zypharian, Admiral Korvax paced, his claws tapping against the metal floor. "Their ship is here. I can feel it," he growled. "But they're hiding like cowards." Varkin hesitated. "Admiral, the drones have swept the field twice. There's no sign of life." Korvax's yellow eyes narrowed. "That's what bothers me. A human ship doesn't just vanish." A low beep echoed through the bridge. One of the officers turned pale. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission." Korvax's tail flicked. "From where?" The officer's voice trembled. "From inside the wreckage." A distorted signal crackled through the bridge's speakers. Static, layered with something else. A whisper, too faint to understand. Then, a voice. "You shouldn't have come here." The sound slithered through the speakers like ice down their spines. The bridge fell silent. Korvax's grip on the console tightened. "Trace it. Now." The officer's hands shook as he tried. "Sir, the signal is bouncing between wreckage fragments. It's everywhere." Korvax snarled. "Impossible." Then the lights flickered. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Korvax felt fear. The ghost of the battlefield. Unseen, deep within the asteroid field, the Helios was still drifting silently. Carter watched his screen with a satisfied smirk. "How are they reacting?" Nova's voice purred. "Pulse readings indicate an increase in erratic behavior. Scanners show the Zypharian's crew is experiencing heightened stress." Reyes grinned. "So, they're spooked." Carter nodded. "Good. Now let's make them panic." The kill begins. On the Zypharian, alarms blared. The fleet's scanners glitched, picking up phantom signals, dozens of them. "Sir," an officer cried, I'm detecting multiple human warships." Korvax froze. "What?" The officer's voice shook. "They're everywhere, sir. Coming from." He stopped, staring at his screen in horror. "They're coming from the wreckage." Korvax snarled. "Impossible. The Helios was the only ship. The humans don't have a fleet." And then, a human warship emerged from the wreckage. It wasn't real. But the Zypharian scanners didn't know that. It flickered like a ghost, its shape shifting, its weapons aimed directly at them. Then another appeared. And another. The entire battlefield lit up with phantom ships, reflections, echoes of the Helios, generated by Nova's AI mastery. The Armada's sensors lied to them, and in their panic, they opened fire. On each other. The trap springs shut. Korvax watched in horror as his own fleet turned on itself. Dreadnoughts fired at phantoms, but their blasts tore into real ships. Frigates tried to maneuver, but collided in the chaos. The once mighty Armada was caught in a storm of illusions and destruction. Varkin gasped. "Admiral, we're killing our own." Korvax's mind raced. Cease fire. Cease fire. But it was too late. The real Helios, still hidden in the asteroids, waited. And when the moment was perfect, it struck. From the darkness, it fired one single shot. A precise, calculated, lethal shot. It pierced the Zypharian shields and slammed into its engine core. For the first time in its existence, the Zypharian shook violently. Korvax stumbled. His eyes widened in disbelief. No. The Zypharian's power grid failed. For the first time in history, the flagship of the Galactic Armada was vulnerable. And the ghost wasn't done yet. The fall of the Armada. The Helios vanished back into the asteroid field. By the time the Armada regained control, the damage was irreversible. Half their fleet was crippled or destroyed. Their flagship was wounded. And the enemy, the one human warship, was still out there, hunting them. Korvax gritted his fangs. His invincible Armada had been reduced to prey. The ghost ship had won. And worst of all, The legend was only beginning. The legend is born. The Xipharian, the Galactic Armada's pride and terror, drifted helplessly in the void. Silent, wounded, the once mighty flagship had never suffered damage like this before. The bridge was in chaos, officers scrambling to regain control, alarms blaring like a death knell. Admiral Korvax stood frozen, his claws digging into the cold metal railing. His mind refused to accept what he saw. One human warship. One. And it had torn apart the greatest fleet the galaxy had ever assembled. A growl rumbled in his throat. This isn't possible. But it was. The final message. Deep in the asteroid field, the Helios floated in the shadows, its engines pulsing with silent energy. Carter stood on the bridge, watching the damage reports scroll across the screen. They had taken hits, severe ones, but they were still alive. More than that, they had won. Reyes exhaled sharply, grinning. Damn, Captain. I think we just made history. Carter smirked. No, Reyes. We just started history. He turned to Nova. Open a channel to the Xipharian. Let's see if the Admiral is still feeling arrogant. A moment later, Korvax's snarling face appeared on the cracked screen. His yellow eyes burned with rage. You, human. Carter leaned forward, voice calm but deadly. Admiral Korvax, your fleet is broken. Your ships are in ruins. Your legend, shattered. Korvax bared his fangs. You think this battle is over? The Galactic Empire will hunt you down. Your entire race will be wiped from existence. Carter chuckled. You don't get it, do you? He leaned in closer, his voice cold as the void. You sent an armada to crush one human warship, and you lost. The silence on the bridge was suffocating. Carter let it sink in before speaking again. Now, go back to your Emperor. Tell him what happened here. Tell him that humanity is not prey. Tell him that next time you send a fleet, we'll be waiting. With that, Carter cut the transmission. The Empire trembles. Admiral Korvax stood in stunned silence, staring at the darkened screen. Varkin swallowed hard. Sir, what are your orders? Korvax's claws shook. His mind raced, but deep down, he knew. The Empire would never recover from this. Fear had been placed in their hearts. A name had been carved into history, and for the first time in his life, Korvax understood what true terror was. With a trembling voice, he gave the only order he could. Fall back. The birth of a legend. As the Galactic Armada retreated, the Helios disappeared into the stars. Silent, unstoppable, a ghost among the void. The battle was over. But the war had only just begun. And across the galaxy, in the farthest reaches of space, whispers began to spread. They spoke of a lone human warship, a phantom that shattered fleets, a name that would never be forgotten. The Helios, the ghost of the void. And the message was clear. Humanity was not to be underestimated.